I've never had a time in my professional life where Americans have been more concerned about their own self-protection.
So probably the number one question I get from people is when I do a video analysis of violence, I never talk about the victim. I never talk about how the victim could have done something different or look at anything from the victim's perspective. And people always ask me, they go, oh, what use is this? You're just showing us what the criminal can do or the bad guy can do. And that tells me, that, listen, I know a lot of people are new to this channel. I know a lot of people are new to my training and my principles. Not all of you have read my book, When Violence is the Answer, or The 5 Most Critical Seconds of Your Life. So you're probably unfamiliar with this principle, but it's a very key principle that I just want to go over it very quickly with you. Yes, watching violence is tough, especially when it's brutal criminal violence against an innocent victim. But trust me when I say this, there is nothing to be learned from the victim's perspective. Let me repeat that. There is nothing to be learned from the victim's perspective. When we view violence, we need to protect ourselves to only identify and acknowledge the winning side of using the tool, not the losing side. There's nothing to be learned on the losing side. So when you're watching an act of violence, it's to your benefit to know when did things change in the other person's favor. Good guy, bad guy, doesn't matter. Somebody did something and got a result. Now that is an injury, meaning they put enough trauma into the body to where the other person had to respond to that trauma instead of trying to go after the person or try to protect themselves from something else. They had to deal only with that trauma no matter what they wanted to do. That means a sensory system or a structure of the human body has been broken and no longer working during this encounter that they had with violence. Now, where did all this come from? Why do I say you can learn nothing from the victim's perspective? It's really to protect your mindset. What was interesting, they did a study when I was studying with, or when I was getting together with a lot of the people in correction, some of the senior people and some of the senior psychiatrists and psychologists. They were sharing with me a bunch of different information they got. And one of the most interesting things, it was kind of set it aside. They did a study where they were showing self-defense videos to prisoners. And they're also showing acts of violence to prisoners. And what was interesting was not really necessarily the response per se that the prisoners had, because there was a lot of hubris there and everything. But what was interesting is when you showed it to most normal people, they chose to look at everything from good guy, bad guy. And the bad guy was always the guy doing the violence. And so they always tried to be the person that could undo the violence. How could the victim have done something different? That's the position they put themselves in. What was interesting is the predators, the prisoners, when they looked at violence, they never took it from the victim's perspective. They always saw themselves being on the winning side of it. And then, of course, the people that were even better, the more alpha predator, would sit there and say, well, yeah, that guy did it this way, but I would have done it this way, meaning improving upon the violence to get a better result. Now, what did we extrapolate out of that? They were protecting their minds. They could never imagine themselves being on the other side of violence. Therefore, there's nothing to learn when you're looking at somebody on the losing side of violence. And it's a very interesting thing. It's very hard for sane, socialized people to put this into practice. And it's a huge challenge. If you want to see a display of this, it's my TED Talk, Paradox of Violence. You need to just look Paradox of Violence, Tim Larkin, it'll come up. It's a TED Talk. At the end, I give the audience choice. And I think you'd be surprised. The audience all chose to be victims. So again, you are not condoning an act of violence by watching it for where things change in somebody's favor. What you're doing is you are mechanically looking at things and saying, okay, oh, that guy, when he kicked him, with the ball of his foot to the bottom of his throat, he got a huge result. That's something I need to be banked in there. I might need that someday. That's interesting. Now, again, it can make you sound like you're almost being a sociopath by this, but that's not what we're doing here. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get our brain to associate only with the successful use of the tool of violence. Therefore, when we watch violence, we want to see who ends up winning and how did they do it. And that's the only information that's useful to us to protect ourselves. Of course, we feel bad for a victim who was just attacked in a criminal situation, but that doesn't do anything for us to protect us. Our job is to learn. Our job is to see what works, not to sit there and be empathetic and put ourselves behind the 8 ball by trying to undo violence that's already been done right in front of our eyes. So again, a lot of you have written in and asked me to the point to where I wanted to do this video. It's a strange concept, but listen, I would say for the next 30 days, if you want to give yourself a challenge, this is a challenge I put out at a lot of my seminars, that for the next 30 days, when you see an act of violence, either a CCTV, movie, the news, anytime you're there, stop it, especially if it has any sort of audio, turn the audio off, watch the act of violence. Look to where the first injury happens. Look how the person is using the tool of violence that wins. Are they effective? Are they efficient in what they do? How is their target placement? These are all things that we can learn from and also protect our brain. We're telling our brain, hey, listen, I only want you to look for useful information here on the tool of violence. That means find out for me what works. Now, after 30 days of doing this, you're going to be able to finally get natural. You're not going to feel bad about seeing an act of violence and trying to learn from it, because you got to the point to where your brain understands that it's looking for good information. It's just almost clinical. It's almost like a medical examiner when they have the body on the steel platform and they're going to do an autopsy. They're very matter of fact. They have to tell the story as it went through. As horrific as the story is, they have to tell the story. Doesn't mean they don't have empathy for the murder victim, but they need to tell the story as they see it. And that's the approach we have to take. So that's why I say to people all the time when they're telling me, but hey, could he have done this or could she have done that? And I just stop them in their tracks and just tell them, listen, don't look at things from the victim's perspective. There's nothing to learn. So with that in mind, until next time, please stay safe. Go to timlarkin.com where we go in depth on this and all other subjects. Sign up for your free masterclass there. Also, please share the channel and continue to share it with your friends and send them videos. If you think there's a video that you saw on the channel that somebody would like, please share it. We are the fastest growing self-defense YouTube channel right now, and it's all because of you guys. So I appreciate it. Until next time, stay safe.